Hello guys, this is Billy Fletcher here again with from Alliance Champions. Just going to talk to you a little bit today about, for lack of a better word, we could call one of our mantras, so to speak. It's what I sign off pretty much every email that I write out to our clients. I sign off with a little saying. It's commit, show up, don't quit, and be uncommon. Okay, so pretty basic, pretty simple, but I consider it really to be like a success formula. No matter what it is, it doesn't have to be even related to a fitness goal, but pretty much anything. If you apply those simple things, you'll be successful. And I want to take a little bit of time today to kind of talk a little bit more in detail about each aspect of that, each piece of it. And let's start with commitment. I recently was listening to a podcast with Mark Devine. You've heard me talk about him before. Former Navy SEAL who now has a company called SEALFit and Unbeatable Mind. I've done a lot of great things with him in the past. Some of our Crucible events that we've talked about. I think on the last video we talked about our 6-hour challenge, that Crucible challenge that we did was kind of modeled after some of the things I've learned from Mark. And on that podcast, he had a gentleman on there, and they were talking about goals. And the gentleman referred to really kind of a life-changing thing for him. He was meeting with one of his mentors, and his mentor said, I want you to go home this evening, and I want you to write down everything you want to accomplish in your life. And, he's kind of taken back by it, but he did what his mentor said. He went home and kind of wrote down this big list and brought it back to his mentor the next day. And he showed it to him, and his mentor said, okay, are you committed to these goals, or are you just interested in them? And he says, what's the difference? He says, well, if you're committed, you'll do what it takes. If you're just interested, you'll find reasons and excuses not to take action. So that was, I really like that, because I think, a lot of times, and especially in today's society, that word commitment doesn't always mean the same thing as maybe it did, just a few years ago. People say, well, I'm committed to this or that, and then it just means I'm interested for a short period of time, and then I'll lose interest and go on to something else. So the first thing is making that commitment. Number two, show up, and that one, it kind of ties in obviously with commitment. You can't just say I'm going to commit to something. You have to show up and do the work. And a lot of times that's easy in the beginning. When you set a goal, you're excited about it. You've got some new energy and that sort of thing, and you can get after it. But then after a while, you may hit, it's inevitable. You're going to hit plateaus. You're going to hit bumps in the road, things of that nature. So where do you get the motivation to keep showing up? And came across a great, formula for that as well. I got this from Brian Johnson. Has a great company called Optimize.me, and he has a formula, and it's kind of like this. So it says motivation is equal to expectancy times value over impulsivity times delay. So if you just kind of take that and think about it, it makes a lot of sense. So your motivation is going to be related to whether or not you actually expect to be able to achieve the goal you've set for yourself. So you want it to be a stretch, but at the same time, if you really don't think you're going to achieve it, you're not going to have very much motivation. And then also, you have to look at, do I really value that goal? And we've talked about this in the past as well. I relate that to, what's your why? If you have a big why, and that relates to like what your core values are, that's going to give you more motivation. So if you may expect to achieve a goal, but if it's not you don't really have a big purpose behind it or a big why behind it, a lot of times you don't have that motivation. And then the bottom of that equation is in impulsivity. Like I said, impulsivity times delay. So it's easy to get distracted, especially again in today's day and age. We've got smartphones and we've got Facebook and we've got media, TV, all over the place. And so there's a lot of things that can kind of get us off track of what our goals are. So, staying focused is a big piece of that. And then also your delay. Delay basically meaning that, when I set a goal, it's okay to have long-term goals, but I need to kind of focus on what I'm going to do today. So if I put that goal out too far, a lot of times I'll kind of lose that motivation. So even if you do have a long-term goal, you can think of reverse engineering that back and to, okay, what can I do towards that goal today? And then every day you have just a little micro goal of what I'm going to do working towards that goal. So that's how you maintain your motivation. And Brian also added one component to that, which was energy. So if you take the top part of that equation and you multiply that by energy, or actually have energy as the first piece, times your expectancy times your value, that's a whole nother dimension. And that really ties into everything else we do as well, because what's going to give you energy? It's kind of a synergistic effect. If I'm eating well, like we've talked about before, if I'm getting adequate rest and sleep, if I'm moving my body, if I'm breathing, just doing simple meditation, breathing exercise throughout the day, that's going to help create more energy, which kind of fuels everything else in there as well. So real quick again, for motivation, which is a big piece of the showing up, be motivated to show up, is energy times value times expectancy divided by impulsivity times delay, okay? And then the next piece of the equation is don't quit. And this is one of my favorites. Again, in any of our Crucible events that we've done, whether it's the 12 hours of Jiu-Jitsu, the 24-hour walk, the 6-hour Crucible, any of those type things, that's a big piece of the equation. It's not that you have to be the best performer in those events. It's just hang in there and keep going. And when again, for me, when I went out and had the opportunity to do one of my Crucible events, which was with Mark Devine, 50 hours Kokora event, that was one of the things one of the coaches told me beforehand. That's really all he said. He says, that's all you got to remember is just don't quit. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Keep moving forward. And that's been in more recent years. Really, I like to share a story really from way back. The first time I ever remember being told, you don't quit, was my dad. And actually, I was in second grade. Still remember it. I was playing football. I grew up in a small town, so pretty much everybody played sports. You didn't have anything else to do. So I was playing football, and to be honest, I was not very good. I didn't. Actually was pretty terrible. So playing football, I didn't get to play, and decided I'm going to quit. So go home after school one day. We got a game that evening. Come home and tell my mom, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to play anymore. My dad got home from work, and he says, well, the game's already started, but guess what? You're going to the game. So made me go to the game, sit in the stands and watch, and go back to practice the next day, and says, you're at least going to finish out the season. So I remember us talking about this years later. He had no memory of that whatsoever, but it always stuck with me. And so, just to kind of show that, I ended up playing football for another, 10 years, played through high school, ended up being all conference my senior year. And that's only to say that it was kind of, there's a million stories like this, but had I quit, I never would have got to do that, And sometimes you don't know when you start something. You may not be very good at it at the beginning, but if you just stay with it and don't quit, a lot of times you'll never know your potential if you give up. So I think that's a great component of what we talk about, not quitting. And then if you do all those three things, it leads to really what I consider to be you're uncommon. So not to be negative on it, or put a negative twist, but most people don't do those first three things. They'll pick a goal, or they'll say I'm going to do this or do that, and they don't. Either they don't fully commit. If they do commit, they don't show up on a consistent basis, and at some point they quit, and they never get to where they to their potential, which I think is key. And so, if you look at that, even I recently read this. For some people it may be a good goal, but I think for a lot of people to realize it's really not that difficult. If you look at the top 3% in North America, you'll be in the top 3% in North America if you do really these four things. Don't smoke. You eat 5 servings of vegetables each day. Work out, for 30 minutes, 5 days a week, and really, that's not a whole lot to do. And if you do that, then you're going to be in like the top 3%. Okay. So one of the things I'm challenging some of my clients to do is if you're already doing those things, okay, then what can you do beyond just being uncommon? And then one of the words that I've heard recently that really resonated with me is this Greek word that means is called arete, A-R-E-T-E. And basically my version of that, the way I understand it, is basically it's being the best version of yourself from moment to moment. So it's not really about comparing yourself to someone else. It's trying to be the best you can be on a daily basis. Is that easy to do? No, but it's a great challenge. And so if you kind of put that in your mind and think about that, applying some of the other things that we've talked about, that can be an awesome challenge. We're nearing the end of this year. So that's something you can kind of put in your mind for this year, but also looking forward to next year. That can be a great goal going into the new year. Thank you.